The woman's silhouette against the setting sun looked like salvation itself, and Harrison Yates had long stopped believing in such things. He reined in his horse about 50 yards out, watching her work with steady, practiced movements along his eastern fence line. The wire she was mending caught the orange light, and her hands moved with a confidence that spoke of experience rather than desperation. That alone set her apart from the usual drifters who wandered onto his property outside Tropic, Utah, in this sweltering summer of 1884. Most people who stumbled onto his land were looking to take something. This woman appeared to be fixing what was broken. Harrison dismounted slowly, his boots hitting the dry earth with a soft thud. He was 32 years old and had lived alone on this ranch for the past 6 years. Ever since his father died and his mother followed 3 months later, her heart simply giving out from grief. The isolation had carved lines into his face that made him look older, and the silence of the high desert had settled into his bones, until he rarely spoke more than a handful of words to anyone in town when he made his monthly supply runs. The woman must have heard him approach because she straightened and turned, though she did not run. Her dress was travel-worn and dusty, a faded blue that might have been pretty once. Dark hair escaped from beneath a bonnet that had seen better days, framing a face that was both weary and watchful. She could not have been more than 25, Harrison guessed, but her eyes held the kind of knowledge that came from hard living. "Evening," she said, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "I know how this looks, but I can explain." Harrison said nothing, just studied her with the same careful attention he gave to everything on his land. She held a pair of wire cutters in one hand and a roll of fence wire in the other. Behind her, he could see that she had already repaired a good 20 feet of fence that had been damaged in last week's windstorm. "I have been camping in that grove of cottonwoods about a mile east of here," she continued when he remained silent. "I saw your fence was down and some of your cattle had wandered through. I rounded them up this morning and drove them back through, but I figured the fence needed mending or they would just wander out again." "That is my fence," Harrison said finally. His voice came out rougher than he intended, rusty from disuse. "I know," she replied, meeting his gaze directly. "And this is your wire and your tools. I found them in that supply shed near the creek. I planned to return everything and be gone before you noticed, but I suppose I worked slower than I thought." Most people would have made excuses or tried to charm their way out of the situation, but this woman just stood there stating facts as plainly as if she were discussing the weather. Something about her directness appealed to Harrison in a way he had not expected. "What is your name?" he asked. She hesitated for just a moment, and in that pause, Harrison sensed there was more to her story than simple drifting. "Rose," she said finally. "Rose Ormond." "And what are you doing on my land, Rose Ormond?" "Traveling," she said. "Heading west. I have been walking mostly, but I ran low on supplies and needed to rest for a few days. Your cottonwood grove had water and shade, and it seemed far enough from your house that I would not disturb you." "You have been there for days, and I did not notice." 3 days, she confirmed. "I am good at not being noticed when I need to be." Harrison glanced at the fence she had been repairing. The work was solid, better than some ranch hands he had hired in the past. "Where did you learn to mend fence?" "My father had a small ranch in Colorado," Rose said. "Before he died, he taught me everything he knew. Said a woman needed to be able to take care of herself because you never knew when circumstance might require it." Smart man. He was. Something flickered across her face, grief or regret or both. That was 5 years ago. The sun was sinking lower now, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Harrison made a decision that surprised him even as he spoke the words. "It will be dark soon. You should come up to the house. I will fix some supper. Rose's eyes widened slightly. That is kind of you, but I do not want to impose. I can finish this fence and be on my way. That fence can wait until morning, Harrison said. And you are already imposing by being on my land, so you might as well accept a hot meal before you go. For a moment, he thought she would refuse. Then her shoulders relaxed slightly, and he realized how much tension she had been carrying. Thank you, she said quietly. I appreciate it. They walked back to the house together, Rose carrying the tools and Harrison leading his horse. The ranch house was modest but well maintained, a two-story structure his father had built with his own hands. Harrison had kept it in good repair, though he lived in only a few rooms these days. The rest stood empty, monuments to a life that might have been if his family had survived. Inside, Harrison lit the lamps while Rose stood near the door, clearly uncertain about her place in this unexpected hospitality. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a cast iron stove in one corner and a rough-hewn table in the center. The furnishings were sparse but functional, everything marked by the kind of cleanliness that came from a man who had too much time to think and needed tasks to fill the hours. You can wash up at the pump outside, Harrison said, gesturing toward the back door. I will get the stove going. When Rose returned, her face and hands were clean, though her dress still bore the dust of the trail. Harrison had already started cooking, pulling out salt pork and beans and cornmeal for johnnycakes. The routine of cooking for someone else felt strange after so many years of solitary meals. Can I help? Rose asked. You can set the table, Harrison replied, nodding toward the cabinet where he kept his dishes. They worked in companionable silence, the kind that felt more comfortable than awkward. Harrison found himself acutely aware of her presence in his kitchen, the soft rustle of her dress, the careful way she handled his dishes as if they were precious things. When everything was ready, they sat across from each other at the table, and Harrison realized he could not remember the last time he had shared a meal with another person. This is good, Rose said after her first bite. Thank you. It is simple food. Simple does not mean bad. She ate with the focused attention of someone who had not had enough to eat recently, though she tried to maintain proper manners. Harrison quietly added more to her plate when she finished her first helping. Tell me about your ranch, Rose said after a while. How long have you been here? I was born here, Harrison replied. My father claimed this land in '58 when I was 6 years old, built this house, raised cattle, worked himself hard for 20 years before his heart gave out. My mother did not last long after that. I am sorry. The words were simple but genuine. It was 6 years ago. I have made my peace with it. Harrison paused, then surprised himself by continuing, though I suppose the peace looks a lot like loneliness most days. Rose studied him with those watchful eyes. That is why you live out here alone. No family left. No family, Harrison confirmed. Had a sister, but she married a merchant in Salt Lake City and moved away years before my parents died. We write occasionally, but she has her own life now. And you never thought about selling, starting somewhere new? Harrison shook his head. This land is in my blood. My father's sweat is in every fence post. My mother's love is in every stone of this house. I cannot leave it, even if the silence gets heavy sometimes. Rose nodded slowly, as if she understood something about being bound to places and memories. I think that is honorable. Too many people these days are quick to abandon what matters. They talked through the meal, though Harrison found himself asking more questions than answering them. Rose spoke carefully about her travels, mentioning towns she had passed through and work she had done. But Harrison noticed she never mentioned where she had started or why she was traveling west. Every time the conversation moved in that direction, She gently steered it elsewhere. As darkness fell completely and the lamp light grew warmer, Harrison finally asked the question that had been building all evening. "What are you running from, Rose?" She went very still, her fork halfway to her mouth. "What makes you think I am running?" "I have spent enough time alone to notice things," Harrison said quietly. "The way you watch the door, how you chose to camp far from my house where you could see anyone approaching, how you are traveling alone without proper supplies or even a horse. You are running from something, and I would wager it is not the law." Rose set down her fork carefully. For a long moment she said nothing, and Harrison thought she might gather her things and leave despite the darkness outside. Then she took a deep breath and met his eyes. "You are right," she said. "I am running from a man named Victor Slade. He was my husband." The word was hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. "Was?" Harrison asked. "I left him 4 months ago," Rose said. "Walked out while he was in town one day and never looked back. I have been moving ever since, staying ahead of him because I know he is looking for me. Victor does not let go of things he considers his property." "He hurt you?" It was not a question. Rose's hand moved unconsciously to her left arm, touching a spot beneath her sleeve. "Often enough that I knew staying would eventually kill me. He had a temper that grew worse with drinking, and he drank more as the years passed. We were married for 3 years, and every one of them taught me new ways to hide bruises and lie about accidents." Anger flared hot in Harrison's chest, the kind of righteous fury he had not felt in years. "Where was your family? Friends? Dead or distant?" Rose replied. "Victor was charming when he wanted to be. He courted me properly after my father died, offered stability when I was alone and grieving. I thought I was lucky to have someone who wanted to take care of me. I did not realize until after we married that he wanted to own me, not care for me." "Where was his ranch?" "Eastern Colorado, near the Kansas border. A small operation, but profitable enough. I worked alongside the ranch hands for 3 years, did everything from mending fences to breaking horses. Victor did not believe in hiring help he could force his wife to do for free." That explained her skill with the fence, Harrison thought. "Why did you leave when you did?" Rose's face went pale in the lamplight. "Because I realized I was pregnant, and I could not bring a child into that house. Could not let Victor be a father to an innocent baby. So I waited until he went to town one Saturday, took what little money I had hidden away, and started walking." Harrison's chest tightened. "You were pregnant?" "Were. I lost the baby 6 weeks into my journey," Rose said, her voice barely above a whisper. "There was a town doctor who was kind enough not to ask too many questions. He said it happened sometimes when a woman was under great strain, that my body was too worn down to carry a child. Part of me grieved, but another part felt relieved that I did not have to figure out how to keep a baby safe while running." The raw honesty in her words cut through Harrison's years of isolation like a knife through butter. He realized he was gripping the table edge hard enough that his knuckles had gone white. "This Victor Slade, has he come close to finding you?" "Twice," Rose admitted. "Once in a town in New Mexico where I was washing dishes at a restaurant. Someone told me a man had been asking questions about a woman matching my description. I left that night with nothing but the dress on my back. The second time was 3 weeks ago in a settlement near here. A ranch hand mentioned he had seen Victor in the area, asking after a woman traveling alone. That is when I left the road and started moving through open country, trying to leave less of a trail. He must want you badly to chase you this far. Victor never forgets a slight, and leaving him was the biggest slight imaginable in his mind." Rose's voice was steady, but Harrison could see the fear lurking beneath her composure. "He will not stop looking until he finds me or until he is dead. Those are the only 2 ways this ends." Harrison stood and walked to the window, looking out at the darkness beyond. His land stretched for miles in every direction, isolated enough that trouble could arrive without warning. But isolation also meant privacy, places to hide, room to see someone coming from a distance. "Stay," he said, the word emerging before he had fully thought it through. "What?" Harrison turned to face her. "Stay here. Work for me. I need help with the ranch, and you clearly know what you are doing. You can earn your keep, save money, and be far enough off the main roads that this victor might pass right by without ever knowing you are here." Rose stared at him as if he had suggested something impossible. "You do not know me. I could be lying about everything. Are you?" "No, but you have no way to verify that. The fence you mended today tells me everything I need to know about your character," Harrison said. "You did work you were not asked to do with no expectation of payment just because it needed doing. That speaks louder than any words." "Harrison, I appreciate the offer, but I cannot put you in danger. If Victor finds me here, he will not care that you are just trying to help. He will see you as someone who took what belongs to him, and he will react accordingly." "I can handle myself," Harrison said, and there was steel in his voice now. "This is my land, and I decide who stays and who goes. If this Victor Slade shows up here looking for trouble, he will find more than he bargained for." Rose stood, her hands gripping the back of her chair. "Why would you do this? Risk yourself for a stranger?" Harrison considered the question, trying to find words for feelings he barely understood himself. "Because I have spent 6 years alone on this ranch, watching the days blur together into nothing. Because tonight, for the first time since my parents died, this house felt like a home instead of a tomb. Because you fixed my fence when you did not have to, and that tells me you are someone worth helping." He paused, then added more quietly, "And because I know what it is like to feel alone in the world, and I would not wish that on anyone, especially someone running for their life." Tears glistened in Rose's eyes, though she blinked them back quickly. "I could bring you nothing but trouble." "Then it will be trouble I chose," Harrison replied. "My eyes are open. Stay, Rose, at least until you have enough money saved to make a real start somewhere else. At least until you are strong enough to face whatever comes next." Rose was quiet for a long time, her gaze moving around the room as if measuring the space, calculating risks and possibilities. Finally, she nodded slowly. "If I stay, I work. I will not accept charity. I earn my keep or I leave." "Agreed," Harrison said. "I pay ranch hands $30 a month plus room and board. You will get the same. That is generous. That is fair. You will be doing the work of a ranch hand, so you get a ranch hand's wages." Harrison gestured toward the stairs. "There are 2 bedrooms upstairs. I use the one on the left. The right one was my parents'. It has been empty for 6 years, but the bed is good and the room is clean. It is yours for as long as you need it." Rose nodded, exhaustion suddenly evident in every line of her body. "Thank you, Harrison. I do not know what else to say except thank you." "Get some rest," Harrison said. "We will start work at sunrise. There is plenty to do around here." After Rose had gone upstairs, Harrison sat alone in the kitchen, listening to the soft sounds of her moving around in the room above. He wondered if he had just made a terrible mistake or the first right decision in 6 years. Either way, the loneliness that had been his constant companion felt less oppressive tonight, pushed back by the simple presence of another person in his home. The sun had not yet crested the horizon when Harrison woke to the smell of coffee. He dressed quickly and came downstairs to find Rose already at the stove, working with the same quiet efficiency she had shown at the fence. She had changed into a different dress, this one gray and more practical for work, and her hair was braided back from her face. "I hope you do not mind," she said when she noticed him. I found the coffee and thought I would make myself useful. Mind, I have not woken to fresh coffee in years." Harrison poured himself a cup and savored the bitter warmth. "You did not have to start so early." "I am used to working dawn to dusk," Rose replied. "Victor expected nothing less, so the habit is hard to break." They ate a quick breakfast of leftover cornbread and fried eggs, then headed out into the cool morning air. Harrison showed Rose around the ranch properly, pointing out the various outbuildings, the corral where he kept his horses, the cattle that grazed on the open range. His herd was not large, perhaps 200 head, but they were good stock and kept him financially stable. "What needs doing most?" Rose asked, her eyes scanning the property with an assessing gaze. "Everything," Harrison admitted. "I keep up with the essential work, but I have been running behind for years. Fences need constant mending, the barn roof leaks in 3 places, half my water troughs need resealing, and I have been meaning to build a better chicken coop for 2 years now." Rose nodded. "Then we should make a list and prioritize. What will cost you most if it does not get done soon?" Harrison found himself appreciating her practical approach. "The fence, probably. I lose more cattle to wandering than anything else. After that, the barn roof before winter comes." "Then we work on fence this week," Rose decided. "I will continue the east line today. You should check your other boundaries and mark any other spots that need attention." They split up, each taking a horse and riding in opposite directions. Harrison found his attention wandering as he checked his fence lines, his thoughts drifting back to the woman now working somewhere on the other side of his property. He tried to tell himself it was simple gratitude for the help, but he knew it was more than that. There was something about Rose that had cracked through the ice that had formed around his heart over the past 6 years, letting light into spaces that had been dark for far too long. By midday, when they met back at the house for a quick meal, Harrison had marked 7 more spots where the fence needed serious repair. Rose had finished the section she had been working on and looked hot, but satisfied with her progress. "I forgot how good it feels to accomplish something tangible," she said, gulping water from the ladle at the pump. "When you are running, you are never building anything. You are just surviving day to day." "You are not running anymore," Harrison said. "At least not today." Rose met his eyes and something passed between them, an understanding that went beyond words. "No," she agreed. "Not today." The days fell into a rhythm after that. They worked hard from dawn to dusk, taking breaks in the heat of the afternoon when even the cattle sought shade. Rose proved to be every bit as capable as she had claimed, working alongside Harrison with a strength and endurance that impressed him. Together, they accomplished more in 2 weeks than he had managed in the previous 6 months. But it was the evenings Harrison came to treasure most. After the work was done and they had washed away the day's grime, they would sit on the porch as the sun set, talking about everything and nothing. Rose began to open up more, sharing stories from her childhood on her father's ranch, and Harrison found himself talking about his parents in ways he had not been able to since their deaths. "Your mother sounds like she was remarkable," Rose said one evening, 3 weeks after she had arrived. They were sitting on the porch steps, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "She was," Harrison agreed. "Strong in ways my father never was. He built this place with his hands, but she built it with her heart, made it a home instead of just a collection of buildings." "That is a rare gift," Rose said softly, "making a place feel like home." "You have that gift too," Harrison said, then felt his face heat as he realized how forward that sounded. "I mean, this house has felt more like a home in the past 3 weeks than it has in 6 years. Rose turned to look at him, her face half shadowed in the twilight. "Has it been 6 years since you let anyone close?" 6 years since I let anyone in at all," Harrison admitted. After my parents died, I told myself I did not need anyone else, that I could work this ranch alone and that would be enough. But the truth is, I was afraid that if I let myself care about someone again, I would lose them too. And now, Rose's voice was barely above a whisper. Now I am still afraid, Harrison said honestly. But I am more afraid of spending the rest of my life alone, working this land until I am buried in it, never having really lived at all. Rose reached out and took his hand, her fingers rough with calluses that matched his own. I am afraid too. Afraid that Victor will find me, that I will bring destruction down on your head just when you have opened your door to me. Afraid that I do not deserve this kindness, this second chance at having something good in my life. Harrison turned his hand to clasp hers properly. You deserve every good thing, Rose. What that man did to you, that was not your fault. You survived it, and you had the courage to escape it. That takes more strength than most people have. They sat there holding hands as full darkness fell, neither of them speaking but both understanding that something fundamental had shifted between them. What had started as simple hospitality had become something deeper, a connection that grew stronger with each passing day. A month after Rose arrived, Harrison had to make his regular supply run to Tropic. The town was small but served the scattered ranches in the area, with a general store, a blacksmith, a small church, and a saloon that did steady business. Harrison usually made the trip alone, but this time he asked Rose if she wanted to come along. I should stay here, Rose said, worry evident in her eyes. The fewer people who see me, the better. You cannot hide forever, Harrison said gently. And if Victor is looking in towns, he is probably asking about a woman traveling alone. A woman with me, living as a ranch hand, that is a different story entirely. You will be hiding in plain sight. Rose considered this, then nodded slowly. You are right. And I do need some things that I cannot keep borrowing from you forever. The ride to Tropic took 2 hours, and Harrison found himself enjoying the journey in a way he never had before. Rose rode well, comfortable in the saddle, and her presence made the familiar route feel new somehow. They talked easily, their conversation ranging from practical matters about the ranch to more personal topics that would have felt too intimate just weeks ago. Tropic was quiet when they arrived, just a handful of people going about their business on the dusty main street. Harrison helped Rose down from her horse, acutely aware of his hands on her waist, the warmth of her body close to his. Their eyes met for a moment, and he saw his own feelings reflected there, desire and caution tangled together. Let us get the supplies first, Harrison said, his voice rougher than he intended. Then we can look at what else you might need. They were loading flour and sugar into the wagon when Harrison heard a voice behind him that made his jaw tighten. Well. Harrison Yates actually came to town with a woman. Did not think I would see that day. Harrison turned to see Marcus Brennan leaning against the porch post of the general store. Brennan owned the largest ranch in the area and had a reputation for being as charming as he was ruthless. He was also the man who had tried to buy Harrison's ranch 3 years ago, offering an insultingly low price and getting angry when Harrison refused to sell. Brennan, Harrison said with a curt nod, going to introduce me to your lady friend. Brennan pushed off the post and walked over, his eyes raking over Rose in a way that made Harrison's hands curl into fists. This is Rose, Harrison said. She works for me. Works for you, Brennan's eyebrows rose. That is progressive of you, Yates. Most men do not hire women for ranch work. Most men are fools, Rose said pleasantly, though her eyes were cool. They let pride get in the way of practical sense. Brennan laughed, though the sound had an edge to it. I like her, Yates. If you ever tire of her company, I am always looking for hands. I pay better than whatever this old miser is giving you." "I am satisfied with my current situation," Rose said, moving closer to Harrison in a way that was clearly territorial. "Thank you for the offer." Brennan's eyes narrowed slightly, calculating. Then he tipped his hat and stepped back. "Well, if you change your mind. Come on, Yates, no hard feelings. I'm just trying to help a lady find the best opportunity." After Brennan walked away, Rose let out a slow breath. "He is going to be a problem, is he not?" "Brennan is always a problem," Harrison muttered. "But he is all talk." "Do not let him worry you." They finished their shopping and were preparing to leave when the sheriff approached them. Daniel Warren was a good man in his late 40s who had kept the peace in Tropic for the past 10 years. Harrison had always respected him, though they were not close friends. "Harrison," Warren said with a nod. "Good to see you. Been a while since you came to town." "Sheriff, this is Rose Ormond. She is working my ranch for the season." Warren touched his hat brim politely. "Madam, welcome to Tropic." Then he turned back to Harrison, his expression growing more serious. "Listen, I wanted to give you a heads up. There has been a man asking around the territory for a woman matching Miss Ormond's description. Came through here about a week ago." Rose went pale, her hand gripping the wagon seat. Harrison moved closer, his presence protective. What kind of man? Hard to say. Kept his business to himself mostly. But he was asking after a woman traveling alone, dark hair, late 20s, might be using the name Rose or Rosa. Said she was his wife and he was trying to bring her home. "What did you tell him?" Harrison asked, keeping his voice level despite the anger burning in his chest. "Truth. That I had not seen anyone matching that description." He moved on, heading west toward the settlements near Cedar City. Warren looked at Rose with kind eyes. "I have been doing this job long enough to know when a man is looking for someone who does not want to be found. If you need any help, Miss Ormond, I hope you know you can come to me." Rose's voice was shaky when she spoke. "Thank you, Sheriff. That means more than you know." After Warren left, Harrison helped Rose into the wagon, his hand steadying her when she trembled. "He passed through. That is good news, Rose. It means he does not know where you are." "For now," Rose whispered. "But he is still looking, Harrison. He came this close." "And the sheriff sent him in the wrong direction." Harrison climbed up beside her and took the reins. "Come on. Let us get home." The ride back was quieter than the journey out had been. Rose sat close beside Harrison, and he could feel the tension radiating from her body. When they were about halfway home, she finally spoke. "I should leave. Put distance between here and wherever Victor is heading. The longer I stay, the more danger I bring to your door." "No." The word came out harder than Harrison intended. He pulled the wagon to a stop and turned to face her. "Rose, listen to me. Running has not kept you safe. It has just kept you tired and alone and vulnerable. Here, you have a place to stand and defend yourself if necessary. You have me standing with you. That is worth more than constantly moving. But if he comes here and finds me, if he hurts you because of me, I could not live with that." Harrison reached out and cupped her face with one calloused hand, his thumb brushing her cheek gently. "And I could not live with myself if I let you leave, knowing you were out there alone and in danger. Rose, these past weeks, having you here, they have meant more to me than I can properly say. You have brought life back to my ranch, back to me. I will not let you go without a fight." Rose's eyes filled with tears. "I am so tired of running, Harrison, so tired of being afraid. When I am with you, I feel safe for the first time in years. But I do not want that safety to come at the cost of your life." "Then stay," Harrison said, leaning closer. "Stay and let me help you build something worth defending instead of just surviving. Let me stand with you against whatever comes." "Why?" Rose whispered. "Why would you risk so much for me?" Harrison realized that the answer had become clear to him over the past weeks. crystallizing into a truth he could no longer deny. Because I am falling in love with you, Rose. Because somewhere between finding you at my fence and sitting with you on my porch watching the stars, you became the reason I look forward to tomorrow. Because, for the first time in 6 years, I can imagine a future that is not just empty years of solitude. Rose drew in a sharp breath, her eyes searching his face. Harrison, I cannot promise you that loving me will not bring pain. My past is complicated and Victor is dangerous. I know, Harrison said, and I am choosing you anyway, choosing us if you will have me. For a moment, Rose just stared at him, tears streaming down her face. Then she leaned forward and kissed him, her lips soft and tentative against his. Harrison wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close, and the kiss deepened into something that spoke of longing and hope, and the desperate need to believe that good things were possible even in a hard world. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. Rose rested her forehead against Harrison's, her hands fisted in his shirt. I am falling in love with you too, she whispered. I have been trying not to, trying to protect both of us from the complications, but my heart does not seem to care about practicality. Harrison laughed softly, the sound rusty but genuine. Then we are both fools together. I would not have it any other way. They sat there for a long moment, holding each other in the middle of the dusty road, before Harrison finally clicked to the horses and started them moving again. But now Rose sat pressed against his side, his arm around her shoulders, and the weight of loneliness that had burdened him for so long felt lighter than it had in years. When they reached the ranch, they unloaded the wagon together, working in companionable silence. But everything felt different now, charged with new meaning. Every glance held promise, every accidental touch sparked awareness. Harrison found himself hyperconscious of Rose's presence, the way she moved through his space as if she belonged there, because she did. That evening, as they sat on the porch after dinner, Rose spoke quietly. I need to tell you everything about Victor, about what he is capable of. If we are going to face this together, you need to know what you are up against. Harrison nodded, his hand finding hers in the darkness. Tell me. Rose took a deep breath. Victor Slade is 38 years old. He came from money back east, but he lost most of it gambling and drinking. He headed west to start over, bought his ranch with what he had left. He is smart and charming when he wants to be, but underneath, there is a cruelty that runs deep. I think he learned it from his father, who beat him regularly as a child. Not that it excuses anything he has done. How did you meet him? At my father's funeral. He came to pay respects, though I later learned he barely knew my father. I think he came because he heard I would be inheriting the ranch, small as it was. He courted me for 6 months, bringing flowers and speaking sweetly, always the perfect gentleman in public. I was grieving and alone, and his attention felt like salvation. Rose's hand tightened on Harrison's. We married quickly, and I moved to his ranch. The first time he hit me was 3 weeks after the wedding. I had forgotten to collect the eggs one morning because I was sick with fever. He said a wife should do her duties regardless of how she felt, and he backhanded me across the face. I was so shocked I could not even react. He apologized after, cried, and said he did not know what came over him, that it would never happen again. But it did, Harrison said, anger making his voice rough. It did. Over and over. Any little thing could set him off. Dinner that was not hot enough, clothes that were not clean enough, the way I looked at one of the ranch hands. He broke my arm once, then took me to a doctor 20 miles away so no one local would know. Told me if I said anything to anyone about how it happened, he would kill me and make it look like an accident. Why did you not go to the law? Rose laughed bitterly. Because Victor is friendly with the sheriff in our county. They drink together at the saloon. and because I knew no one would believe me over him. He is careful, Harrison. He never hits where bruises will show when I am dressed. He never loses his temper in front of others. To everyone in town, he is a respectable rancher with a difficult wife who does not appreciate what she has. But you escaped. I escaped because I realized I was pregnant and something in me just snapped. I thought about Victor as a father, imagined him raising a son to be like him or breaking a daughter's spirit the way he had broken mine. And I knew I would rather die trying to escape than let that happen. So I planned carefully, saved every penny I could hide, and when the moment came, I walked away and never looked back. Harrison pulled Rose into his arms, holding her close. "You are the bravest person I have ever met." "I do not feel brave. I feel terrified most of the time." "Bravery is not the absence of fear," Harrison said. "It is doing what needs to be done despite the fear. You did that, Rose. You saved yourself." They sat together as the night deepened around them, and Harrison felt his determination harden into something unbreakable. Whatever happened, whatever challenges came, he would protect Rose with everything he had. She had survived too much to lose her freedom now. The next weeks passed in a state of heightened awareness. Harrison made sure his rifle was always loaded and within reach. He taught Rose to shoot, and she proved a natural with a pistol, her hand steady and her aim true. They developed a system where one of them was always near the house, able to see if anyone approached from a distance. But life went on too. The work of the ranch continued, and in the midst of vigilance, moments of joy bloomed like desert flowers after rain. Harrison and Rose grew closer each day, their relationship deepening from attraction to something more profound. They talked for hours, learning each other's thoughts and dreams and fears. They worked side by side, their movements synchronized from familiarity. And they stole kisses whenever the moment allowed, each one a small rebellion against the fear that shadowed them. One evening, 2 months after Rose had arrived, they sat on the porch watching a spectacular sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Rose had her head resting on Harrison's shoulder, his arm around her waist, and the contentment Harrison felt was almost painful in its intensity. "I never thought I could feel this way," Rose said softly. "Safe and happy and hopeful all at once. It feels like a dream I am going to wake up from." "It is not a dream," Harrison assured her. "This is real. We are real." Rose lifted her head to look at him. "Harrison, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Anything. If Victor never finds me, if we get lucky and he gives up or something happens to him, what do you see for us? For our future?" Harrison turned to face her fully, his hands cupping her face. "I see you staying here, not as a ranch hand but as my wife if you will have me. I see us working this land together, building something that is ours. I see children someday, if we are blessed, growing up loved and safe. I see growing old together, sitting on this porch when we are gray and creaky, still talking as the sun sets. That is what I see, Rose. That is what I want." Tears spilled down Rose's cheeks. "I want that too, so much it hurts." "Then marry me," Harrison said, the words emerging with sudden certainty. "Not today, not until you feel safe enough. But someday when you are ready, marry me and let me spend the rest of my life proving that not all men are like Victor Slade." "Yes," Rose whispered. "Yes, someday I will marry you, Harrison Yates. When the shadow of my past is not hanging over us, when I can stand at an altar without fear, I will marry you and be proud to call myself your wife." They kissed as the sun dipped below the horizon, sealing a promise that felt as binding as any formal vow. 3 months after Rose arrived, winter began to settle over the high desert. The work changed with the season, focusing more on maintaining shelter for the cattle and ensuring adequate feed. Harrison and Rose worked through the cold months, their breath misting in the morning air as they went about their tasks. They had settled into a comfortable domesticity that felt natural despite its newness. Rose had transformed the ranch house in subtle ways, adding small touches that made it feel lived in again. She had sewn new curtains for the kitchen, planted an herb garden near the back door, even convinced Harrison to bring down some of the furniture from the upstairs rooms to make the main living area more comfortable. The bedroom situation had remained chaste, with Rose keeping to her own room despite the obvious attraction between them. Harrison respected her need for boundaries, understanding that after what she had endured with Victor, moving too fast would be damaging. He was content to wait, to court her properly, to prove through patience that his love was nothing like the possessive violence she had known. But there were moments of weakness, times when the desire between them flared hot enough to test their resolve. One snowy evening, trapped inside by a blizzard, they sat close by the fire, talking in low voices. Rose had been telling a story about her childhood when she suddenly stopped mid-sentence, her eyes locked on Harrison's face. "What is it?" Harrison asked. "I was just thinking," Rose said slowly, "how strange it is that I spent 3 years married to Victor, but never once felt like I had a home. And here I have been with you for 3 months, and this is the first place that has felt like home since my father died." "That is because this is your home," Harrison said, "for as long as you want it to be." Rose reached out and traced her fingers along his jaw, her touch feather light. "Harrison, I need you to know something. What I feel for you, it is not gratitude or convenience. I am in love with you. Truly, deeply in love with you in a way I did not know was possible." Harrison turned his head to kiss her palm. "I know, I feel the same. I want to be your wife in truth," Rose continued, her voice shaking slightly. "Not just someday in the abstract future, but soon. I am tired of letting fear control my choices. I am tired of letting Victor steal my joy even from hundreds of miles away. I want to build our life together, Harrison. I want to share your bed and wake up in your arms and not feel like I am waiting for the other shoe to drop." Harrison pulled her close, his heart pounding. "Are you sure? I do not want you to feel pressured. I can wait as long as you need." "I am sure," Rose said firmly. "I have never been more sure of anything. Will you marry me, Harrison, here soon before winter is out?" Harrison laughed, the sound full of surprised joy. "I thought I was supposed to ask you that question." "I am not a conventional woman," Rose said with a small smile. "So what do you say?" "Yes," Harrison said, pulling her into his lap. "Yes, 1,000 times yes. We will marry as soon as we can arrange it." They kissed with a passion that had been building for months, and when they finally pulled apart, both were flushed and breathless. "Should we wait until spring?" Rose asked. "So your sister can come and we can have a proper ceremony." Harrison considered this. "I would like Sarah to be here, but I also understand if you want to keep this quiet for now, whatever you prefer." Rose thought for a moment. "Write to your sister. Invite her to come in the spring for a celebration, but for the actual wedding, let us keep it simple. Just us and the preacher and maybe Sheriff Warren as a witness. Something private and real." "That sounds perfect," Harrison agreed. The next day, when the storm had passed, they rode to Tropic together. The town was quiet, blanketed in fresh snow that muffled sound and made everything seem suspended in time. They went first to the church, where Reverend Thomas Miller listened to their request with kind eyes and a warm smile. "I would be honored to marry you," he said. "It will be good to see you settled, Harrison. Your parents would have been pleased." They set a date for 2 weeks out, giving them time to make simple preparations. Afterward, they stopped by the sheriff's office to ask Daniel Warren to stand as witness. He agreed immediately, his weathered face creasing into a genuine smile. "About time you found someone, Yates," Warren said. "And I am glad it is you, Miss Ormond. I had a feeling there was more to your story than you were saying, but I trust Harrison's judgment. He is a good man." "The best I have ever known," Rose said, taking Harrison's hand. They bought a few supplies and were preparing to leave town when they encountered Marcus Brennan again. He was coming out of the saloon, his face slightly flushed from drink, and his eyes lit up when he saw them. "Well, if it is not the happy couple," he said, his words slightly slurred. "Still working that ranch all alone, Yates. Must get lonely out there." "Actually, Rose and I are getting married," Harrison said, keeping his voice level. "In 2 weeks." Brennan's face darkened. "Is that so?" "Moving fast, are we not? What do we really know about this woman, Harrison? Where she came from, what she might be running from?" "That is none of your concern," Harrison said, his hand moving to Rose's back protectively. "It is the concern of everyone in this community when strangers show up and start making claims on property," Brennan shot back. "Your ranch borders mine, Yates. What happens there affects me. And I am just saying, a woman shows up out of nowhere, latches onto a lonely rancher, suddenly they are getting married. Sounds like someone looking for security more than love." Rose stiffened beside Harrison, but before he could respond, she stepped forward. "Mr. Brennan, I do not owe you an explanation for my life or my choices, but I will say this once. I am not after Harrison's property or his money. I am in love with him, and he is in love with me. We are getting married because we want to build a life together. If that threatens you somehow, that says more about you than it does about us." Brennan's face went red. "I was just looking out for my neighbor's interests." "No," Harrison said quietly. "You were looking to cause trouble because you cannot stand to see someone else happy. Stay away from my ranch, Brennan, and stay away from my wife." They left Brennan sputtering on the sidewalk and headed home. Once they were out of town, Rose let out a shaky breath. "Do you think he is going to be a problem?" "Brennan is always a problem, but he is also mostly bluster," Harrison assured her. "Do not let him get under your skin." But as they rode home through the snowy landscape, Harrison could not shake a feeling of unease. Brennan had looked at Rose with a calculating expression that suggested he was not done making trouble. Harrison made a mental note to be extra cautious in the coming weeks. The 2 weeks before the wedding passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. Rose sewed herself a simple but lovely dress in pale blue, and Harrison bought a new shirt and vest from the general store. They cleaned the house from top to bottom, made plans for a modest wedding supper, and talked late into the night about their future. The night before the wedding, they sat on the porch despite the cold, wrapped in blankets and watching the stars. "Are you nervous?" Harrison asked. "Terrified," Rose admitted, "but in a good way. I am afraid something will go wrong, that this happiness cannot possibly last. But I am also excited to start our life together officially." "Nothing is going to go wrong," Harrison said with more confidence than he felt. "Tomorrow we get married, and then we build the future we have been dreaming about." The wedding took place on a crisp morning in late January of 1885. Harrison and Rose rode to town together, Rose wearing her blue dress with a warm cloak over it. The church was small and drafty, but Reverend Miller had lit the stove, and the space felt warm and welcoming. Sheriff Warren arrived with his wife, Clara, who had insisted on coming to provide female support for Rose. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt, with Reverend Miller speaking about love and commitment and partnership. When it came time for vows, Harrison spoke as clearly and firmly, his eyes never leaving Rose's face. "I, Harrison Yates, take you, Rose Ormond, to be my wife. I promise to stand beside you in joy and in hardship, to respect your strength and support you in weakness, to build a home where you always feel safe and valued. I promise to love you with everything I have for all the days of my life." Rose's voice shook with emotion when it was her turn. "I, Rose Ormond, take you, Harrison Yates, to be my husband. I promise to work beside you, to be your partner in all things, to honor the trust you have placed in me. You have given me back my life, my hope, my belief that good men exist in this world. I promise to love you with my whole heart, now and forever." When Reverend Miller pronounced them husband and wife, Harrison kissed Rose gently, aware of their small audience but unable to contain his joy. She was his wife now, truly and legally his, and he was hers. They had both been alone for so long, and now they would never be alone again. The small celebration afterward at the ranch was perfect in its simplicity. Clara Warren had brought a cake, and they ate wedding supper by lamplight, laughing and talking like old friends. The Warrens left as the sun was setting, and suddenly Harrison and Rose were alone as husband and wife for the first time. "Well," Rose said, standing in the middle of the kitchen, suddenly shy, "here we are." Harrison moved closer, taking her hands in his. "Here we are, Rose Yates." "I like the sound of that." "So do I," Rose admitted. She looked up at him, her eyes full of love and trust and a lingering hint of nervousness. "I want this, Harrison. I want to be your wife in every way, but I need you to be patient with me. I have only known marriage as something painful, and I am still learning that it can be different." "We will take it as slow as you need," Harrison promised. "This is about both of us, about building something together. There is no rush." They went upstairs together, and in the privacy of Harrison's bedroom they came together slowly, gently, learning each other with tenderness and care. Rose cried at one point, overwhelmed by the gentleness of Harrison's touch, so different from what she had known before. Harrison held her close, whispering reassurances, letting her set the pace until her tears turned to sighs of pleasure. Later, lying tangled together in the darkness, Rose traced patterns on Harrison's chest. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For reminding me that intimacy can be beautiful. That I can be touched without pain, that my body is mine to share rather than something to be taken." Harrison kissed the top of her head. "You never have to thank me for that. This is how it should always be between husband and wife. Love and respect and mutual joy." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and for the first time in longer than either could remember, neither had nightmares. The winter months passed peacefully after that. Harrison and Rose settled into married life, discovering the small pleasures of shared routines and mutual companionship. They worked the ranch together, made love in the warmth of their bedroom while snow fell outside, talked about plans for expanding the herd come spring. Rose bloomed under the security of their marriage, gaining weight that softened the sharp edges hunger and stress had carved into her frame. Her smiles came more easily, her laughter rang out more often. Harrison found himself falling more in love with her every day, amazed by her strength and grateful for her presence in his life. In March, Harrison's sister Sarah arrived from Salt Lake City with her husband Robert and their 3 children. Harrison had written to tell her about Rose and the wedding, and Sarah had insisted on coming to meet her new sister-in-law and celebrate properly. Rose was nervous about meeting Harrison's family, worried they would disapprove of the hasty marriage or question her past. But Sarah embraced her warmly the moment they arrived, her round face creasing into a genuine smile. "Harrison wrote that you make him happy," Sarah said, holding Rose at arm's length to study her. "That is all I need to know. Welcome to the family, Rose." The week of their visit was chaotic and joyful, the house full of noise and laughter for the first time since Harrison's parents had died. Sarah and Rose bonded quickly, talking for hours while they cooked or sewed. Harrison enjoyed getting to know his nieces and nephew, children he had barely seen since they were babies. One evening, while the children were asleep and the men were outside checking on the horses, Sarah and Rose sat by the fire talking. Sarah studied Rose carefully, then said gently, "You ran away from something, did not you?" Rose froze, then slowly nodded. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who has been watching for the signs," Sarah said. "I can see it in the way you sometimes flinch at sudden movements, how you watch the door when strangers approach. Harrison would not pry, but I am not as polite. Are you in danger?" Rose considered lying, then decided Sarah deserved honesty. "I was married before, to a man who hurt me. I left him and came west, and Harrison found me and gave me a chance to start over. We fell in love, and now here we are." Sarah reached out and squeezed Rose's hand. "Does Harrison know?" "He knows everything. He married me knowing my past might complicate our future." "That sounds like my brother. He loved hard as a boy, loyal to a fault. I worried the years alone had killed that part of him, but I see now it was just waiting for the right person." Sarah's expression grew serious. "This man you left, is he looking for you?" "He was. I do not know if he still is." Rose met Sarah's eyes. "I hope he has given up, but I cannot be certain. That uncertainty is the price of my freedom." "Then we pray he never finds you," Sarah said firmly. "And if he does, he will discover that the Yates family protects its own. You are Harrison's wife now, which makes you my sister. I will not let anyone hurt you." The unexpected support brought tears to Rose's eyes. She had been alone for so long that having family again felt like a gift she did not deserve but desperately needed. When Sarah and her family left at the end of the week, Rose felt both exhausted and energized. The visit had been wonderful, but she was glad to have quiet and privacy with Harrison again. They waved goodbye from the porch, then turned to each other with matching smiles. "That went well," Harrison said. "Your sister is wonderful. Your whole family is wonderful. They loved you. Sarah told me she is glad I found someone strong enough to match me." Harrison pulled Rose close. "And she is right. You are the strongest person I know." Spring arrived with a rush of green across the high desert. Harrison and Rose threw themselves into the work of the ranch, branding new calves, repairing winter damage, planting a larger garden than Harrison had attempted in years. The days were long but satisfying, and they fell into bed each night too tired to do more than hold each other close. In late April, Rose began feeling ill in the mornings. At first, she dismissed it as something she ate, but when the nausea continued for a week, realization dawned. She waited another week to be certain, then told Harrison one evening as they sat on the porch. "I am pregnant," she said simply, watching his face for his reaction. Harrison went very still. "Are you certain as I can be without a doctor confirming it? All the signs are there." "How do you feel about it?" Harrison asked carefully. He remembered what Rose had told him about losing a baby during her flight from Victor, the mixed grief and relief she had felt. Rose took a moment to examine her feelings honestly. "Scared," she admitted, "but also happy. When I was pregnant before, it felt like a trap, one more thing binding me to Victor. But this child is yours, ours, created from love instead of violence. I want this baby, Harrison. I want to bring our child into this home we have built together." Harrison pulled her into his arms, his face buried in her hair. "I am terrified," he admitted. "Terrified something will go wrong, that you will be hurt, that I will fail as a father. But mostly I am so happy I can barely breathe. We are going to have a baby, Rose, our baby." They held each other as the stars came out, two people who had been alone for so long now building a family together. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the summer. Rose continued working as long as she was able, though Harrison fussed over her constantly, trying to make her rest more than she wanted. They made plans to travel to Tropic for regular checkups with the doctor, and Harrison began working on converting his old bedroom into a nursery. Rose wrote to Sarah to share the news, and her sister-in-law sent back an enthusiastic letter full of advice and congratulations. The reality of becoming a mother was settling over Rose slowly, transforming her anxiety into cautious excitement. She would lie in bed at night with Harrison's hand on her growing belly, feeling the baby move, and allow herself to believe that maybe, finally, she was safe enough to embrace this joy without fear. In August, when Rose was 6 months along, they made a supply run to Tropic. Rose was visibly pregnant now, and they received warm congratulations from everyone they encountered. Sheriff Warren's wife offered to help when the baby came, and Reverend Miller spoke about baptism plans. It felt like they were truly part of the community now, no longer outsiders but established members with a stake in the town's future. They were loading their wagon when a stranger approached them. He was a tall man with cold eyes and a way of moving that immediately set Harrison on edge. "Excuse me," the man said, his voice polite but with an undertone that made Harrison step in front of Rose protectively. "I am looking for someone, and I wonder if you might help me." "Looking for who?" Harrison asked, his hand moving casually to rest near the gun at his hip. "A woman." "About her height," the man gestured toward Rose without really looking at her. "Dark hair, might be traveling alone or with someone. She is my wife, ran away some months back. I just want to bring her home." Harrison felt Rose go rigid behind him. This was Victor Slade. It had to be. The man's description was too accurate, his manner too predatory despite the civilized words. "Have not seen anyone like that," Harrison said, keeping his voice level. "Mostly just local folks around here." Victor's eyes narrowed slightly, as if he could sense the lie. "You sure about that?" "Because I have been tracking her for months, and this is about where her trail goes cold. Someone must have seen something." "Lots of people pass through," Harrison said. "Cannot keep track of them all. Sorry, I cannot help you." Victor studied Harrison for a long moment, and Harrison had the distinct feeling he was being sized up as an opponent. Then Victor tipped his hat and stepped back. "If you do see a woman matching that description, I would appreciate if you could send word to me. I will be staying at the saloon for a few days. Name is Victor Slade." He walked away before Harrison could respond. Rose was shaking, her hand gripping Harrison's arm hard enough to bruise. "That was him," she whispered. "Harrison, that was Victor." "I know," Harrison said grimly. "Come on. We need to get home." They drove out of town quickly, Rose looking over her shoulder the entire way. Harrison's mind was racing, calculating options and probabilities. Victor was in Tropic, asking questions. It was only a matter of time before someone mentioned the rancher who had recently married a woman matching Rose's description. They had a day, maybe two, before Victor put the pieces together. When they reached the ranch, Harrison immediately began preparing. He checked every weapon they owned, made sure ammunition was plentiful and accessible. He showed Rose where he kept his father's rifle and made sure she could reach it easily. Then they sat down to make a plan. "I will not let him take you," Harrison said. "Whatever happens, you are my wife and this is our home. He has no legal right to you anymore." "Marriage does not work that way for women," Rose said bitterly. "I was still legally married to Victor when I married you. If he pushes the issue, the law will be on his side." "Then we will not let it come to the law," Harrison said grimly. "If he comes here, if he tries to take you, I will stop him, whatever it takes." Rose cupped his face with both hands. "I will not let you become a murderer for me, Harrison. If Victor comes, if there is no other way, I will go with him. I will not let him destroy you." "No," Harrison said fiercely. "We are past the point where you face this alone. We face it together or not at all." They spent a tense night, taking turns keeping watch, but nothing happened. The sun rose on a quiet ranch, everything peaceful and normal. They went through the motions of their daily work, but the ease they had built over months was gone, replaced by constant vigilance and simmering dread. The confrontation came 2 days later. Harrison was working in the barn when he heard horses approaching. He grabbed his rifle and stepped outside to see 3 men riding up the path to his house. Victor Slade was in the lead, flanked by 2 rough-looking men who were clearly hired guns. Rose emerged from the house, her face pale but composed. She stood on the porch, one hand resting on her swollen belly, and waited. Victor reined in his horse and dismounted, his eyes fixed on Rose with an intensity that made Harrison's finger tighten on the trigger. "There you are," Victor said, his voice almost gentle. "I have been looking for you for so long, Rose. It is time to come home now." "This is my home," Rose said, her voice steady. "I am not going anywhere with you, Victor." Victor's expression hardened. "You are still my wife. You ran away, but that did not end our marriage. I've come to take you back where you belong." "I am not your wife anymore," Rose said. "I married Harrison. Legally, I am Rose Yates now, and I am carrying his child. Whatever we had is over, Victor. Let me go." Victor's face went dark with rage. "You married him, carrying his bastard." He took a step forward, and Harrison moved to intercept him. "That is close enough," Harrison said, raising the rifle slightly. "Rose is my wife. She stays here. You need to leave my property." Victor turned his cold gaze on Harrison. "You think you can steal another man's wife and face no consequences? I could have you arrested for adultery, for harboring a runaway wife. The law is on my side." "The law says a woman has the right to leave an abusive husband," Harrison countered. "And if you try to force the issue, every bruise you ever gave her, every bone you broke, it will all come out. Do you really want that scrutiny, Slade?" "My word against hers," Victor said with a cruel smile. "And everyone in our county knows my wife is prone to exaggeration and hysterics." "Who do you think they will believe?" "I believe her," Harrison said. "And that is all that matters. Now get off my land." Victor's hand moved toward his gun, and his 2 companions tensed. Harrison kept his rifle trained on Victor, acutely aware that he was outnumbered but determined not to back down. The standoff was broken by the sound of more horses approaching. Harrison risked a glance and saw Sheriff Warren riding up with 2 deputies, their badges glinting in the afternoon sun. Relief flooded through him. "Heard there might be trouble out here," Warren said, positioning himself between Harrison and Victor. "Everything all right?" "This man is trying to take my wife," Harrison said. "Against her will." Warren looked at Victor with cool assessment. "That true, Mr. Slade? She is my wife," Victor insisted. "I have the right to take her home." "Actually, you do not," Warren said. "I took the liberty of checking with a lawyer friend of mine in Salt Lake. Turns out that in the territory of Utah, if a woman can prove abuse, she can petition for divorce without her husband's consent. And even without that, if she remarries in good faith believing her previous marriage is invalid, the new marriage takes precedence, especially if children are involved." Victor's face went red. "That is ridiculous. She is my property." "She is not property at all," Warren said sharply. "She is a person with rights under the law. Now I am going to have to ask you to leave this ranch and leave Tropic, if you continue to harass Mr. and Mrs. Yates. I will arrest you for trespassing and threatening behavior." "You cannot do this," Victor snarled, but his hand moved away from his gun. The presence of 3 lawmen had clearly changed his calculations. "I can and I will," Warren replied. "You have 1 hour to collect your things from town and ride out. If I see you in this area again, you will spend time in my jail." Am I clear? Victor looked from the sheriff to Harrison to Rose, his expression promising violence. But he was beaten and he knew it. This is not over, he said to Rose. You are still my wife in the eyes of God, and I will not forget what you have done. It is over, Rose said quietly. It has been over since the day I walked away. Go home, Victor. Find someone else to torture because you will never touch me again. Victor mounted his horse with barely controlled rage, his hired guns following suit. They rode away at a gallop, leaving dust hanging in the air behind them. Harrison did not lower his rifle until they were completely out of sight. "Thank you," Harrison said to Warren, his voice rough with emotion. "I do not know what would have happened if you had not arrived." Clara was in town when Slade started asking questions, Warren explained. She got worried and rode out to tell me you might be in trouble, figured I should come check on things. "I owe you a debt I can never repay," Rose said, tears streaming down her face. Warren smiled kindly. "Just keep making Harrison happy. That is payment enough. Though if you happen to make one of your excellent pies sometime, I would not say no." After the sheriff and his deputies left, Harrison and Rose stood together in front of their house, holding each other tightly. Rose was crying in earnest now, great heaving sobs of relief and residual fear. Harrison just held her, letting her get it all out. "It is really over," Rose whispered when she could speak again. "He came and he left, and you are still here and I am still here, and he did not win." "He did not win," Harrison confirmed, "and he never will. You are free now, Rose, truly free." They went inside, and Harrison made Rose sit down while he fixed her tea with shaking hands. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving him exhausted and slightly nauseous. He kept seeing that moment when Victor's hand moved toward his gun, kept imagining how differently things could have gone. "What if Sheriff Warren had not arrived?" Rose asked quietly, voicing the same thoughts. "What if it had just been you against 3 of them?" "I do not know," Harrison admitted. "But I know I would not have let him take you. I meant what I said, whatever it took." "You would have died," Rose said. "You would have died defending me, and I would have lost you. But I did not die. We are both here, and we are both safe, and Victor is gone." Harrison knelt in front of her, taking her hands. "Rose, we have been living with this fear for so long that I think we forgot what it is like to just be happy. But we can do that now. We can plan our future without looking over our shoulders. We can raise our child in peace. We won." Rose pulled him close, and they held each other on the floor of their kitchen, 2 survivors claiming their hard-won happiness. The days after Victor's departure were strange and wonderful. Rose walked around the ranch as if seeing it for the first time, the constant tension she had carried for months finally releasing. She laughed more, slept better, and allowed herself to fully embrace the joy of her pregnancy without the shadow of fear dimming it. Harrison watched her bloom into full contentment and felt his own heart settle in ways it never had before. They talked about the future now without qualifications, making plans that extended years into the future instead of just weeks. They chose names for the baby, argued good-naturedly about whether they wanted sons or daughters, and dreamed together about the family they would build. In November of 1885, on a cold night with snow falling gently outside, Rose went into labor. Clara Warren had come to stay with them for the last 2 weeks of the pregnancy, and she took charge immediately, sending Harrison to boil water and prepare clean towels while she helped Rose through the contractions. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next morning. Harrison paced the kitchen floor, alternating between praying and cursing his helplessness. Every cry from Rose upstairs drove a spike through his heart, and he had never felt more useless in his life. Finally, as the sun rose on a clear winter morning, Harrison heard the thin wail of a newborn baby. He took the stairs 2 at a time and burst into the bedroom to find Rose propped against the pillows, exhausted but smiling, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. "We have a son," she said, her voice hoarse but filled with wonder. "Harrison, we have a son." Harrison approached slowly, almost afraid to breathe. Rose pulled back the blanket to reveal a tiny red face, eyes squinted shut, one small fist waving in the air. The baby was perfect, impossibly small and utterly miraculous. "Can I hold him?" Harrison whispered. Rose transferred the baby carefully into Harrison's arms. He weighed almost nothing, warm and fragile and more precious than anything Harrison had ever held. The baby made a small snuffling sound and settled against Harrison's chest, and Harrison felt something fundamental shift in his understanding of the world. "What should we name him?" Rose asked. They had discussed names at length, but now that the moment was here, Harrison knew with certainty what felt right. "James," he said. "James Michael Yates, after your father and mine." Rose's eyes filled with tears. "That is perfect. Hello, James. Welcome to your family." They spent the day marveling over their son, tracing his tiny features, counting his fingers and toes, laughing at his yawns and grimaces. Clara stayed long enough to make sure Rose was recovering well, then left them alone to become a family. That night, Harrison sat beside the bed holding James while Rose slept. The baby was awake, his dark eyes unfocused but seeming to study Harrison's face. Harrison talked to him in a low voice, telling him about the ranch he would grow up on, the land that would someday be his, the parents who already loved him more than life itself. "You are going to have a good life," Harrison promised his son. "Your mother and I will make sure of that. You will grow up safe and loved, knowing your worth has nothing to do with violence or fear. You will learn to work hard and love harder, to be strong but gentle, to stand up for what is right. And you will always, always know that you are wanted." The winter passed in a blur of sleepless nights and overwhelming love. James was a demanding baby, crying often and sleeping in short stretches, but neither Harrison nor Rose minded. They took turns walking him around the house in the small hours, singing lullabies and telling stories. They learned together how to be parents, making mistakes and celebrating small victories. In the spring, Sarah came to visit and meet her nephew. She was enchanted with James, who had grown into a plump, alert baby with Harrison's dark hair and Rose's expressive eyes. The 3 children Sarah had brought with her doted on their new cousin, and the house was once again full of noise and life. "You look happy," Sarah told Harrison one evening. They were on the porch, watching the sunset while the sounds of children playing drifted from inside. "Truly happy in a way I have not seen since we were children ourselves." "I am," Harrison admitted. "Some days I wake up and I cannot believe this is my life, that I have Rose and James, that we built this family together. It feels like a dream." "It is not a dream," Sarah said firmly. "It is what you deserve, what you both deserve. You saved each other, you and Rose. Not many people get that chance." As the years passed, Harrison and Rose settled into the rhythm of their life together. They worked the ranch side by side, James growing from a baby into a toddler who followed them everywhere, asking endless questions about everything he saw. They expanded the herd, built a new barn, and slowly transformed the property into one of the most successful ranches in the area. In the summer of 1888, Rose gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Margaret after Harrison's mother. Where James had been serious and watchful as a baby, Margaret was all smiles and giggles, charming everyone she met. Harrison discovered that having a daughter was simultaneously terrifying and wonderful, and he doted on her shamelessly. 2 years later, another son arrived, whom they named Daniel for the sheriff who had helped save Rose from Victor. And 2 years after that, a second daughter, Alice, completed their family. The house that had been so silent and empty when Rose first arrived was now constantly filled with children's voices, a chaos of toys and laughter and love. Harrison and Rose had their struggles, of course. There were hard winters when money was tight and they worried about the herd. There were sleepless nights with sick children and arguments about how to handle various problems. But through it all, they faced everything together, their partnership as strong as the day they married. Victor Slade never returned. They heard through Sheriff Warren that he had sold his ranch in Colorado and moved back east, marrying again within a year of losing Rose. The news brought a sense of final closure, knowing that he had truly moved on and would not return to threaten their peace. On their 10th wedding anniversary in January of 1895, Harrison and Rose sat on their porch watching the sunset, just as they had done countless times before. The children were inside with Sarah, who had come to visit and offered to watch them so their parents could have a rare moment alone. "Do you ever regret it?" Harrison asked quietly. "Staying here, marrying me, choosing this life?" Rose turned to look at him, her face showing the lines that came from a decade of hard work and hearty laughter. At 35, she was more beautiful to him than the scared, wary woman he had found mending his fence all those years ago. "Not for a single moment," Rose said firmly. "Harrison, you gave me my life back. You taught me what it means to be loved instead of owned. You gave me a home and a family and a reason to wake up grateful every morning. How could I possibly regret any of that?" "I was lonely," Harrison admitted. "Before you, I was so lonely I had forgotten what it felt like to hope for anything. You saved me just as much as I saved you." "Then we are even," Rose said with a smile. She leaned against him and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "We built something good here, Harrison, something worth fighting for." "We did," he agreed, "and we will keep building it for as long as we both live." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in familiar shades of orange and purple. Inside the house, they could hear their children laughing at something Sarah had said, and the sound was sweeter than any music. The years continued to unfold, bringing both joys and sorrows. Harrison's sister Sarah passed away in the spring of 1899, and they made the sad journey to Salt Lake City for her funeral. Harrison grieved for his sister, but he was grateful that she had lived long enough to see him happy and settled with a family of his own. The children grew tall and strong, each developing their own personality and interests. James was serious and studious, spending his free time reading every book he could get his hands on. Margaret was adventurous and bold, always climbing trees and exploring the furthest reaches of the ranch. Daniel was gentle and artistic, sketching everything he saw. And Alice was social and charming, making friends wherever she went. Rose and Harrison took pride in their children, but they also made sure to nurture the relationship between the two of them. They still took time to sit on the porch together most evenings, talking about everything and nothing. They still held hands when they walked around the ranch. They still kissed hello and goodbye, even after decades of marriage. The love between them had deepened and matured, becoming something richer and more complex than the initial passion that had brought them together. In the early months of 1900, as the century turned and the wild frontier of their youth began to fade into history, Harrison and Rose celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary. Their children planned a party, inviting friends and neighbors from miles around. The house was packed with people, all of them celebrating the couple who had become pillars of their community. Sheriff Warren, now retired and in his 60s, gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. When Harrison Yates found Rose mending his fence 15 years ago, I do not think any of us could have predicted what would come from that meeting. But I am proud to have played a small part in ensuring they got their chance at happiness. To Harrison and Rose, may you have 15 more years together and 15 after that. Later, after the guests had left and the children were in bed, Harrison and Rose walked around their property under the stars. The ranch had grown substantially over the years. They now ran 500 head of cattle and employed 3 ranch hands year-round. The house had been expanded to accommodate their growing family, and new outbuildings dotted the property. "You remember the first time I saw you?" Harrison asked as they walked hand in hand. "You were fixing my fence, and I thought you were either the bravest or the most foolish person I had ever met." "I was both," Rose admitted. "Brave enough to keep moving forward, foolish enough to think I could outrun my past forever. You did outrun it in the end. You ran far enough to find me, and then you stopped running and started building instead." Rose stopped walking and turned to face him. "I stopped running because of you, because you gave me a reason to stop, a place worth defending. You were my salvation, Harrison Yates. My safe harbor in a terrible storm." "And you were mine," Harrison replied, cupping her face gently. "We saved each other. That is the truth of it." They kissed under the stars, 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built a life worth living. The children grew and eventually began to leave home to start their own lives. James went to college in Salt Lake City to study law. Margaret married a neighboring rancher's son and started her own ranch just 5 miles down the road. Daniel moved to Denver to pursue art, his paintings beginning to gain recognition. Only Alice remained home, helping Rose and Harrison run the ranch while she taught at the local school. In the spring of 1910, Harrison and Rose became grandparents for the first time when Margaret gave birth to twin boys. They visited often, marveling at the miracle of new life and the strange joy of being grandparents. Harrison held his grandsons and thought about the day he had held James for the first time, how terrified and awed he had been. Now he was older, more experienced, but the wonder remained the same. As they entered their 50s, Harrison and Rose finally began to slow down. They hired a capable foreman to handle the day-to-day operations of the ranch, though they still participated in the work that they loved. They spent more time on the porch, more time traveling to visit their scattered children, more time simply enjoying each other's company. One evening in the summer of 1915, 30 years after Rose had first appeared at Harrison's fence, they sat together watching yet another sunset. Rose's hair was streaked with silver now, and Harrison's was almost completely gray. Their hands were gnarled from decades of hard work, and their faces were lined with years of laughter and tears. "We have had a good life," Rose said softly. "A better life than I ever dreamed possible." "The best life," Harrison agreed. "Every morning I wake up next to you, I am grateful. Grateful that you walked onto my property all those years ago, grateful that I asked you to stay, grateful for every day we have had together since. I am grateful too. For you, for our children, for this place that became my true home. I am grateful that I was brave enough to run when I needed to, and brave enough to stop running when I found somewhere worth staying. You were always brave, Rose. That is what I saw in you from the first day. A woman strong enough to survive hell and keep her soul intact." They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands as they had done thousands of times before. The ranch spread out before them, golden in the evening light, filled with the sounds of life and laughter. Their children and grandchildren would visit tomorrow, filling the house with noise once again. But for now it was just the 2 of them, the way it had been at the beginning. "You think we will have many more sunsets like this?" Rose asked quietly. Harrison squeezed her hand. "I hope we have hundreds more, thousands more. But however many we get, I will treasure every single one because I am watching it with you." "That is all I ever wanted," Rose said. "More days with you, more mornings waking up in your arms, more evenings sitting here watching the sun go down. I would live this life 1,000 times over if given the choice." "Then I am the luckiest man who ever lived," Harrison said, "because I got to live it once and it was more than I ever deserved." "We both got more than we deserved," Rose corrected. "We got each other and everything good that came from that. We got love and family and purpose. We got a second chance when most people never even get a first one." As darkness fell and the stars emerged one by one, Harrison and Rose remained on their porch, wrapped in blankets against the cooling air, surrounded by the life they had built together. The lonesome rancher who had discovered a woman mending his fence all those years ago was lonesome no more. And the woman who had been running for her life had finally found a place where she could stop running and start living. Their love story had begun with fear and desperation, but it had transformed into something beautiful and lasting. They had faced hardship together and emerged stronger. They had raised children who carried their love forward into the next generation. They had built a home that was more than just 4 walls and a roof, a true sanctuary where love and respect and partnership flourished. Years later, when both Harrison and Rose had passed on and their children gathered to remember them, the stories told were of courage and love, of a woman who had the strength to escape a terrible situation, of a man who saw past his own loneliness to offer kindness to a stranger, of 2 people who built a life together through hard work and unwavering devotion. Margaret stood before the gathering, now a grandmother herself, and spoke of what she had learned from her parents. "They taught us that love is not just about the good times. It is about standing together when things are hard. It is about choosing each other every single day, even when that choice is difficult. They showed us that it is never too late to start over, that broken people can heal, and that the best things in life are worth fighting for." James, now a respected judge, added his own memories. "My father told me once that my mother saved him just as much as he saved her, that they were 2 people who found each other at exactly the right moment and had the wisdom to hold on. That is the greatest lesson they taught me. Hold on to what matters, fight for it, protect it, build on it, and never, ever take it for granted." The ranch remained in the family, passed down through generations who honored the legacy of the lonesome rancher and the brave woman who had stopped running long enough to discover that home was not a place, but a person. The fence where Rose had been working that first day still stood, now with a small plaque marking the spot where 2 lives had intersected and transformed. And on quiet evenings, when the sun set over the high desert of Utah, turning the sky those familiar shades of orange and purple, those who knew the story would sometimes pause and remember. Remember that love could bloom in the hardest soil. Remember that courage came in many forms. Remember that the best stories were the ones where broken people found each other and built something beautiful from the pieces. Harrison and Rose's story became legend in Tropic and the surrounding area, passed down as an example of what was possible when people chose hope over fear, love over loneliness, and commitment over convenience. Their descendants carried forward the values they had lived by, creating their own stories of love and perseverance. The ranch house stood for generations, expanded and updated but maintaining its essential character. The porch where Harrison and Rose had spent so many evenings remained a gathering place for family, a spot where important conversations happened and memories were made. The land they had worked so hard to maintain continued to flourish, supporting cattle and crops and the families who tended them. In the end, the story of the lonesome rancher and the woman who mended his fence was a simple one. Two people met by chance and chose each other by design. They faced challenges together and emerged victorious. They built a family, a home, and a legacy that extended far beyond their own lives. They loved each other completely, supported each other unconditionally, and created something lasting from what could have been a tragedy. It was a love story for the ages, set against the backdrop of the Wild West, but timeless in its truth. A reminder that salvation comes in unexpected forms, that healing is possible after hurt, and that the bravest thing anyone can do is choose to love and be loved in return. Harrison and Rose Yates lived fully, loved completely, and left behind a legacy that proved love could conquer even the hardest circumstances. Their story ended not with sorrow but with satisfaction, knowing that they had lived well, loved deeply, and created something beautiful that would endure long after they were gone. And in the end, that was all anyone could ask for: a life lived with purpose, surrounded by love, in the company of the one person who made everything worthwhile.